Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
My Bigfoot sightings have been over a period of time from 1959 to October 21st of 2020. During that span of time, I have had 11 Class A sightings, in which I held hands with two, and a few Class B, which is like vocalizations and woodknocks. So I want to share a couple of those stories with you. I just did this one online. It's from October 1971. I was at Tule Lake in South Pierce County, Washington State. I was 18 years old. I was duck hunting, and I rode out onto this beaver house in the middle of the lake. I had a green Army surplus life raft, and so I rode out and set up on the beaver house and spent the morning pass shooting ducks. And it turned out to be a bluebird day, and it was around 10 o'clock, and I looked back towards the landing where people launched their boats, and I saw this large, brown, bearded head going through the cattails like it was floating, just going through the cattails. And I was watching it, and I could see on occasion a shoulder or an arm as it went through the cattails. And then it dawned on me that those cattails were 7 to 8 feet tall. And that's too big for a person. The head was a full head length above the cattails. So I'm sitting there just watching it walk across, and the ducks would flush out of the weeds. And as it was going, I believe it was hunting along the cattails, and a flock of ducks flew by me. I was momentarily distracted, and I looked back, and at the end of the cattails, I see this massive brown-haired animal on all fours drinking water. And I'm looking at it, and I go, the legs look human, and the left leg, which its left side was facing me, was pulled up under its armpit. It's all brown hair. And so I'm watching it, and I'm trying to figure out, I had a good idea of what it was. And so I pointed my shotgun in a safe direction, and I fired it. And the creature just very smoothly stands up, turns a little bit to the left, and stands there looking at me. And the distance from the beaver house to the bank is about 150 yards, but straight, clear, open across the lake. And it's standing there, and I'm looking at it, and there's a bank behind it, and the bank is about 4.5 feet high, and the bank comes up on a line across below the bottom of its butt cheeks. It's still standing there watching it. I know the height of the bank because I'd been over there before, because I go out to that lake regularly hunting. And so I just keep watching it, and it's standing up. I figure it's about 9 feet tall. It's all brown. I can't make out a lot of detail on its face, but I can see it's got like a Nubian nose, skin on its nose. And it's standing there, and I'm watching it. And I'm pretty sure it could see me, because like I said, it has a straight line of sight. Now, as I'm watching it, it turns its whole body to the right. And so I have a left side profile of it. And it doesn't have a sad look, it has a rounded cone-like head. I could see the protruding eyebrows. It's a flat nose, and it looks like its bottom jaw is like a lantern jaw. It protrudes forward. There's no visible neck. It's got long arms that come down to about its knees. They're brown. I can see 5 fingers. I can see its chest, big barrel chested. I can actually see its uncircumcised male parts. And it's standing. I can't see its feet because it's standing right in the edge of the water. And we watch for a few more moments, and it turns more to the right, and it puts its left hand up on the top of the bank, and then it steps from the water to the top of the bank, right foot and then the left foot. And as it stands up, you can see its calf muscles, its thighs, tendons. You can see its butt. You can see its back all the way to the top of its head. And it stands up there, and it starts walking away and going up. And there's Christmas trees that people raise there. And it's walking into the Christmas tree patches, and it swings its arms and it walks. You can see it. I'm watching it from behind it walk into the trees. And most of these Christmas trees are about 7 to 8 feet tall, and they come up to its chin. And so I'm watching it walk in the trees. And as it's walking in the trees, there's a road that parallels the lake that's on the other side of the Christmas trees. And a pickup truck is coming on that road to go around the lake. And the Bigfoot turns from its waist to the right, and it spots the pickup truck, and it drops straight down to the ground in a squatting position. The pickup truck proceeds to drive by and pass. And when it passes away, the Bigfoot stands back up. It turns and looks at it in the direction it left, and it proceeds to walk through the trees. And I know it's going to have to cross that dirt road to go into the timber. So I said to myself, I got to see this. And so I jumped in my life raft, pulled up my duck decoys, and rowed across to where the bank was. And I got to the bank. I'm looking on the water for footprints. I could not see any footprints in the muddy water. But I look up on the bank, and I can see a left handprint to the left, and then I can see the impressions where it took 2 steps up onto the bank, and as it walked away. So I got back in my raft, and I rowed over to the landing, and I loaded everything to my truck, and I got in my car, and I started driving around the road to about where I figured it would cross the road. I stopped, and on the left side of the road, it's a dirt road. It looks like somebody took a dust mop and whacked it down on the ground, and I can see about an 18 to 24 inch spot where something stepped. And I look to the middle of the road, and there's another footprint. You can see where mud and dirt has fell off the foot. And then on the opposite side of the woods, the road, before it goes into the woods, there's a third track. And it looked like as it took a step, the dirt would fall off its feet. Now, this is an average logging road, and this Bigfoot cleared the road in about 3 steps. And I really judged its height to be about 9 feet tall. And that's basically what I saw on that one. So I'm going to talk about another one, July 20th, 1969. This is at Killen Creek, Mount Adams here in Washington State. So I was fishing early in the morning, and not far from the Killen Creek campground. And there were sounds of birds and wildlife, and suddenly it got very quiet. I heard what sounded like a person whistle twice to get my attention. I looked around, and I didn't see anything, hearing what sounded like someone had a rock and hit a log. Thump. I moved a little bit as to get a better view. I was sitting down, but I couldn't see anybody, so I kept fishing. And a shower of stones and gravel hits the water right in front of me. I glanced around. I was not able to see anyone. So I turned about a quarter turn to my right, facing upstream. I had previously been facing with my face to the stream, so I turned more to the right so I could see the open fields, the woods, the huckleberries, and to my right side, about 20 feet away, was a big dead Douglas fir snag. And I'm sitting there, and a second shower of rocks and pebbles and cones sweeps across the ground and on my foot into the water. And so now I think to myself, okay, somebody's throwing something at me. And I look, I don't see nothing. And as I'm sitting there looking around, nothing happened. I wasn't able to see or who was throwing anything at me. A rock about half the size of a bowling ball comes sailing through the air in an arc and splashes in the middle of the creek in front of me. And I kind of looked back in the direction that it came from, and I saw the arm that threw the rock and where the rock thrower was. Like I said, it was behind that large, dead, standing tree snag 25 feet away. And I want y'all to listen to the behavior and that behavior of what the Bigfoot does. I could see one shoulder on each side of the snag, and the head and face was peeking out on the right side, my right side, his left side of the snag. And I looked at it. It puts its arms up, about shoulder up against the snag, and it sidesteps from behind the snag to the side of it. And I'm still sitting down, and I look at it, and I just talk to it. And I say, "You don't fool me. You ain't no bear." And it steps out parallel to the snag. Now, its arms are long. They're all black. He's got his right arm and palm leaning up against the snag, and his left arm comes across his body, the front, up against and touches the snag like a person would cross their arms in front of their body. And he's all basically black and brown. And I'm looking at this, and I realize this is so big, it would make the old-time professional wrestler Haystack Calhoun look small. Haystack Calhoun was 6'5" tall, and he weighed 649 pounds. This Bigfoot was 8.5 feet to 9 feet tall and had Haystack by about 300 to 350 pounds. So you can see this is a big animal. And my first thought was, who is this big naked pervert watching me? And the light bulb went on in my head. This is not a person. It has to be a Sasquatch. It was obviously a male Sasquatch, uncircumcised male parts exposed. Now, like I said, we're about 25 feet away. Now, the face was human looking. It had brown eyes, brown and black hair over its face, like a full beard on most of its face. Its forehead sloped up back into like a round head. It had square jaw, chin whiskers. A small portion of its ears were sticking out showing outside the hairline on the side of its head. And the ears were black, and they had black hair on them. His eyes were brown. He had a Nubian type nose, which was black. And his mouth was just a little bit open, and you could see a straight line of teeth, a lantern-like jaw, no visible neck. And I figure he was around 4 feet across the shoulders. And his nostril shapes struck me as they were almond shaped. And they were, not round like a gorilla or something, but they were covered up and they were almond shaped. It was not like a gorilla's nose. Their noses are different. And his left arm was hanging down almost to his knees, with the right arm still wrapped around the snag. I stood up and I turned towards it. And as I did that, it made this quick inhale, exhale sound. I just mimicked it back at him. And the Sasquatch turned its whole body to my right, his left side, in a slow, deliberate manner and began to walk away. Clearly visible was the muscle movements as it moved. Its arms would swing as they walked, and there was a 3-foot wide butt and 4-foot wide plus shoulders as he walked away from me. He walked about 50 yards away and turned from the waist. His left arm went back and he turned to his left and he looked one last look back at me, and he turned and walked away into the deep timber. I walked up to the snag where he was at, and this is as he was walking away. And I started looking at the ground around the snag, and first thing I saw was an indentation in the ground where the big rock came from that he threw out in the middle of the creek. And there was a line of tracks. The tracks were about 18 to 19 inches long and about 7 inches wide. It took 2 of my steps to one of its stride around 6 feet in distance. Speaking to myself, that's Sasquatch. I mean, I know what it was, but I'm still talking to myself, as there was nothing else that it really could be. I remember this day. It was a memorable day because this is the day that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon, and I met Mr. Sasquatch up close and personal. This one happened actually on May 29th, 2016, and my wife and I were going fishing, and we turned right at the main road going out of Tacoma towards Roy. It is called Pacific Avenue, and it goes out to the Roy Y, where one left goes north on the mountain highway and the other road goes south. And so we were going south on South 507, which goes through Joint Base McCord. And it was 5:15 a.m. We were going south. We observed this thing, and that looks like an 8 sitting on the side of the road. The animal was about 3 feet high in a sitting crouched position, like it was crossed over. We were going south from left to right. We saw it was covered with black hair. As we approached, we saw its left arm, its shoulder to elbow, its left leg hip to knee, and it was holding a green garbage bag in its lap. The left leg, shin, ankle, and a narrow 5-toed foot. Short black hair on the foot and toes, human-like toenails. The head was larger with no sagittal crest, lantern-shaped jaw that protruded slightly forward. The nose looked wide, and it had a protruding eyebrows like a Neanderthal. Its ears were covered in black hair, tied to the head, no visible neck. The skin of their ears is black, and the hair is black. The hair is about 1/4 to 1/2 inch in length. And their ears are, well, this one's ear side was just a little bit bigger than mine, which is about 2.5 inches, because it wasn't that tall. So there's no visible neck, and we're still going from left to right, and we can see shiny black hair. The animal leaned forward, his head going low, and you could see the top of his head and both black ears. Our distance at this point is I'm driving my truck and we're pulling a boat trailer. We're in the right side lane, and it's sitting straight across from us, and it's maybe 22, 25 feet. And the animal just extends its right arm from the shoulder, parallel to the ground, and it drops some trash from its hand. And the arm had black hair all the way to the knuckles. The arm was too long to be human. It looked, the upper arm and the forearm are an equal size. When it dropped the trash, a thumb and 4 fingers were clearly visible. The animal moved its right arm back in front of its torso, and at 90-degree angle was going back into the garbage bag. It's not a bear. It did this action twice, still going from left to right, south. The right arm and right leg we can see. The right leg is visible from the top of its buttocks to the hip to knee, and its breast is covered up by the green garbage bag. The lower right leg is obscured. We estimate it's overall height to be between 5'6" to 6 feet tall. And we said, Mama Sasquatch would not leave that baby close to the road. And as we drove by, we lost sight of it on the left side of the road. We didn't stop. We had our cameras in our pocket, and that was kind of bad on us. And so this sighting took place in Okanagan County. It was October of 2009, 2 days before opening day of deer season. I arrived at my campsite at about 11 a.m. Clear blue sky, hot, dusty, dry morning for Eastern Washington. Eastern Washington, Western Washington is different. Western Washington is more a boreal, evergreen forest type environment. The other side of the mountain has a lot of sagebrush and dry grass. It does have fir trees and pine trees, and this is Okanagan County is in Eastern Washington, the east side of the state. And so I spent about the next 3.5 hours setting up my camp and got my tent up, my stove installed, and cot set up, my bedding in place, and portable table set up, lanterns hung. And I was thirsty and decided it was time to walk down to the creek for water. Checked my time. The time was 3:15 p.m. Stepped out of the tent, bent over, and picked up my water bucket. And as I'm standing up, looking in the direction of the creek, I see a large head moving above some Douglas fir saplings and below the branch of a fir tree. The head is moving like it's floating along, and it disappears into a thicket. I begin walking slowly down the path towards the creek. Then the head appears and comes through the little trees, and I can see it. I make out a brown skin around the eyes and nose, ape-like side profile, and in my mind, I make that instant identification, Bigfoot. This Bigfoot is just walking along and comes straight into a small opening, a complete side profile, dark brown hair, head to foot. It's a little over 7 feet tall, and it appears to be a female as I saw its breast. I'm standing still next to a tamarack tree. That's a large tree for some people that know. And there's some Christmas trees, sized Douglas trees around. And the Bigfoot continues to walk down. There's no logging road there. And it's walking the logging road, and it will intersect with the path that I'm on that goes down to the creek to get water. And it'll be about 15 feet above the creek. At this time, she's 45 feet in front and to my right. So she's crossing from my right side at about a 45-degree angle from behind me, coming in like an arch onto the road and down towards the creek. As she walks along, her arms swing. They have that distinctive arm swing back and forth, and her thigh comes up as she goes forward to take a step, and then the opposite leg comes up, the back side of the foot, and it comes up off the ground to around 18 inches off the ground. Now, the observation that I was making here, and I shared with the people in the group as we were discussing the difference between how a human and a Bigfoot walks. Now, when a Bigfoot walks, they don't pull out over the knee like we do. You know, we walk, our weight comes up over the knee. As they step, the leg comes up and around. You can see the calf muscles flex and contract as the weight is transferred forward. As the foot comes off the ground, there's no weight on it, and the foot is actually contracts a little bit. And as the foot settles on the ground, our foot's heel hits the ground first. Theirs, it comes down flat. And the foot expands as it becomes weight-bearing. She came straight in front of me, and she turns to the right on the pathway. I just drift quietly and slowly in behind her, and I just start walking behind her. As she's walking, I can clearly see her from the top of her head to the soles of her feet. Her head is about 20 inches high, 18 inches wide. And where her head meets the shoulders, it's about 20 to 24 inches wide. Her back is covered in brown hair. Now, while she's walking, I can observe the motion of her buttocks and her muscles. When her foot comes down on the ground, her calf muscles are flexing out. Then as the foot comes off the ground, there's no weight on it. The foot contracts a little. Okay, as she starts down the path to the creek, I'm about 20 feet behind her, walking slowly, softly behind her. I don't want to surprise her. I don't want her to take off or run. I'm enjoying it. I'm seeing her walk. Off to my side, I hear the thumping of spooked cows. Cows are scared of Bigfoot. Sure enough, there's a small herd of black Angus in Hereford, and the Bigfoot's out of sight. Upon reaching the bank above the creek, with my eyes, I searched the bank and the edge of the creek, 15 feet below me, as well as the trees and the brush going up the bank across the creek. No Bigfoot in sight. The soil is like a sandy dirt, and one step in front of me is a 14-inch long by 5-inch print at the widest spot. There were 5 clear, distinct toes and a little mound of dirt at the mid-tarsal area. Bigfoot has the mid-tarsal break in its foot. As the foot comes down onto the ground and the weight begins to transfer forward, the toes go into the ground deeper and it flexes up, and that motion creates like a little mound of dirt across the track. That's the mid-tarsal break line. And so I'm studying that, and I kneel down. I want to see what the track looks up close, and I can see the dermal ridges and lines in the print. It was a fresh print, only moments old. The only way to get a fresher print is with Bigfoot standing in it. From the heel of the right foot to the heel of the left foot, it was 42 to 47 inches in stride. There were 4 prints that ended 18 inches from a granite boulder that touched the creek and extended out into the water. And I put my 5-gallon bucket on top of that boulder and used it as a marker. And I visually inspect the timber and the brushes going up the hill, the other side of the creek, through the timber, and there's no Bigfoot. In my years of observation of animals in Washington State, most animals are left-handed. Also, they will normally go north. So I began to search downstream for prints and for broken plants. Again, nothing. I reversed course and I inspected the ground and foliage for prints and broken plants. Nothing there. So I returned to where I'd put the bucket, and I think to myself, Bigfoot will put a barrier between you and them, and the creek equals a barrier. To my left side is an old blown down tree. It's resting on the rocks that are in the creek. And there's flood debris that's washed up against it. The log is dry, no footprints. So I turned my attention to the rocks and the boulders above the water line. The water's running, and there's big rocks and boulders that stick out of the water. The creek, about 2/3 of its way across, I see a large rock with a wet spot that's 2 to 3 inches above the water line. Now, focusing my line of sight from the rock to the bank, I see a small clump of green grass and dirt fall into the water. There it is. The impact footprint of a heavy animal crushing down the bank, following that line of sight. Sometimes when you lose track of Bigfoot's track, you got to look in the direction that they're going, and eventually you will pick up another footprint because of their stride. And so, following that, I can see where Mr. or Miss Bigfoot went through the bushes. Mystery is solved to me. So I filled up my water bucket, secured the lid, and thought, camera. I need to get pictures of the prints. And I started patting my pockets. Rats. My cell phone is on the table in the tent. And so up the path I go, bucket in hand, to retrieve my phone back at the tent. I put down the bucket. I go inside. I retrieve my phone. And then I exit the tent and I hustle down the path towards the creek. Oh, shazam, sparkles and twinkle dust. The cows are tromping nervously up and down the path. I arrived at the right footprint, and 3/4 of it was stomped out, and the rest of the tracks were walked on by the cabin. That's squatching, and that's that incident. And this one, my wife is with me, and on May 3rd, 2018, Lady Ellen and I arrived at the entrance to the launch at Clear Lake. Now, Clear Lake is where Ellen and I, every opening day of the season, we go trout fishing. And we turn down the entrance and lane and drive as close as I can to the shore and turning right and straightening out the truck and trailer with the boat launching ramp. It's around 5:35 a.m. The light's kind of blue-gray and mirrors off the surface of the lake. It's a cool, fresh morning, and we exit the truck, and I go from the driver's side down, and I begin preparation to launch the boat. I unplug the lights, put the tailgate down, unsnap the winch line, unhook the safety chains. The light's starting to brighten. The sky's getting brighter. The tackle box is in place. The bait box full of night crawlers, coolers in the boat. Unfasten the hold down and make sure the drain plug is in. And raise the motor because I don't want to back up with the motor and grind it up. And I double check that plug and remove the hold down strap. And 4 other boats are in the various phases of casting off from shore. And the morning light is brighter, and walk up to the passenger side of the trailer and I place the strap in the truck bed. And Lady Ellen, my wife, is transferring boat seats and life jackets into the boat. I pick up the oars and place them in the boat, left and right side of the boat, and we return to the rear of the truck. And picking up our fishing rods and net, and Ellen puts her Mickey Mouse bag in the boat. We're ready to launch. Mornings awaken to the first notes of the coyote choir, prompting more pack members eagerly join. The second verse is building in volume and closer, and backup singers join in, and woo, booms down, joins in. And that's coming down the hill from above where we drove down, and it back echoes from the far shore, and heads are popping up and focusing uphill, and Lady Ellen flashes me a big smile and thumbs up and points up the hill. Coyotes really start firing off, drawing in the deepest breath possible, cupping my hands around my mouth with a shot of adrenaline. Woo! I howled back at it in return. And mere seconds pass, and woo comes back and joins in the mix of reverberating echoes and howls. And then suddenly there's this screech of tires on the road just above us. All sounds go silent, and the song dogs go silent, and all is still. And Lady Ellen comes over, and we share a hug, and it's time to launch the boat. I take that last glance behind the boat, and fishermen are returning to casting off, and some eyes and ears are still focusing up the hill, and 2 fishermen amble over to me, and the older gentleman asks, "What was that howl?" And noticing the eyes and ears about, and I say, "Bigfoot." Sasquatch are very curious, and they generally feel very safe, and they generally come in the nighttime. And about 25 feet down from where we camp at in eastern Washington, there's a big rock, and there used to be a flat board on it, and we'd use that as a gifting table. We'd put food out there for the Sasquatch. And also on that board, I'd make fans out of grouse tails. I spread them out, and I put a rock on them. And I've done this, and I come back in the morning to work on them some more. And sure enough, I'd had a helper, and the helper took the rocks off the tails and stacked them up in a stack, and then stacked up the grouse tail fans, 3, 4 stacked. And I go, okay, assistance. And I looked down on there because I'd put a plate of food there, and I'd gifted them a piece of blackberry pie. That was gone. And so I walked back over to the front of my tent, and there's a board on a couple logs where I put the pies out to cool. I make homemade blackberry and apple pies up there, and on the tin in the right, there was a third of a piece of blackberry pie, and it was covered up in tinfoil. And the tinfoil's moved back, and the third of the pie, blackberry pie, is missing. I guess he wanted a second piece of pie. So that's kind of a cute thing. And so another instance, I had put a tarp over my tent and it had a wrinkle in it. And in the middle of the night, I hear the tarp shaking. And I go, the wind's not blowing and the tarp's shaking. I didn't think nothing of it. And I get up the next morning and the tarp's been shaken and pulled out straight. And it's 8.5 foot up. I couldn't reach it from the ground. I'd like to help. They figured that wrinkle didn't look good in plastic, I'm figuring. And so that's another thing of assistance. And then, of course, there's always this one that you hear from a lot of campers is, I know I put that can of pop or that beer down there on that rock or table outside the tent or camper before I went to bed. And you come out and the pop is gone. And they're sharing with you. And that's a good, cute one. And one year I shot a deer and it skinned it in a game bag and it's hanging up on the gam pole and it started to snow. So I covered it up with a blue tarp so it wouldn't get wet. And I go to bed and I get up in the morning and we're going to go out hunting again. And my brother says, didn't you cover up that deer? And I go, yes, I did. And we shine the lights over there and to the right of the deer, the blue tarp is folded back like in a Z, completely off the deer. They're helping again. I guess they figured it aired better without the tarp on it. And this will be the last one. Now, this one is classic. And this actually happened to me and other people up there camping, and it's happened in other places. Now, I want you to really get involved in this. It's 3:00 in the morning. It's frosty out. And Mother Nature decides you need to go visit the fantastic, fabulous wooden 4x4 by 6 foot outhouse. So you got your little 2D cell flashlight and you walk out and you're half asleep. I don't know how you're dressed. And your only thought is, I'm going to go sit on the throne and take care of business. And you're sitting in there, you got the light on and you're kind of half asleep and wham, bang, a big rock or a stick hits the back of the outhouse. And you know there's nobody around. Everybody else is in bed. And mind you, this is probably a juvenile Sasquatch assisting you and helping you. And these are some of my real life experience with Bigfoot.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown, no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the 5-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.